So then what you're saying is that the words spoken that were inspired by God's word are still applicable for us today. And
Yes.
and sometimes the important people that we think of are currently going on today will be lost to the annals of history, but
Yeah.
also maybe the opposite will occur.
So I think I would say you have no idea. Like that is what there are people. J.C. Ryle toiled away for 10 years in complete obscurity, but he would take every sermon and spend hours getting it publishable and ready to distribute, even though he was a nobody in a nobody town. Now, eventually, when he gets to London, guess what? He has all his sermons ready to go. He's able to distribute them. He's able to publish them. He's able to use them as pamphlets and brochures and tracts, and they're very useful. But for 10 years, for an entire decade, he was working away in obscurity. He did not know, right? George Mueller, he did not know he was going to be running 5 orphan houses and be one of the most famous, Christians of all time. And now he's forgotten. If you go to those original orphan houses now and ask them, hey, where's George Mueller? They'll take out like a cardboard box and be like, here's some pictures. Like he's completely forgotten in his own place. And yet he was he's the father of modern orphanages, right? And now he's forgotten. At the time when he first said, I'm going to build an orphanage and take care of children, he had no idea. And Charles Spurgeon, when the downgrade controversy was going on, he got destroyed by his denomination. 2007, they said, you're wrong. What we're doing is fine. We're not drifting from conservative morals. We're not getting more liberal. You're incorrect, Spurgeon, and we disagree with you. Spurgeon leaves the denomination over it. And his health fails because all his friends have turned against him. His wife basically accuses this liberal drift is what kills him younger than he probably should have died. And yet to the very end, he said, history will see that I was right about this. It took a while, but then eventually we all go, wait a second, theological liberalism is bad. He's 10 years ahead of the Princeton people saying this. He was years ahead of J. Gresham Machen. He's years ahead of B.B. Warfield really getting it. He's one of the first people to say it, but history was right. He was vindicated. He was correct. He early on saw people were drifting from biblical traditional values when it came to the way we live out our faith, and he said, this is going to hurt us in the end.
Yeah, we see that with Ian Huss and would Luther be the Luther we know without those heretical writings in a library that he was able to find and burned at the stake, taken, your bones are crushed and burned even more, and then scattered to the winds. That's how dangerous an idea you have when you're like, hey, maybe Catholicism isn't the way, and they're like, okay, hold on, wait a second. And it takes a Luther to come and humble himself and take his hammer out from there.
And there are people who hear Martin Luther's name and they'll go, oh, he said some mean things or he wasn't the nicest. I'm like, you can only say that because Martin Luther did what he did and cleared the way for you to be away from the Catholic Church. Right. To say those kind of things. You know what I mean? If it hadn't been for Luther and the Reformation, we wouldn't be able to talk about things like that because we would have to be very careful the priest didn't overhear us.
Yeah. And just all the things that I've learned from your show that was done in church history. It's surprising, the elements of the table and threatening to give the people on Christmas Eve day, the elements when they weren't worthy enough. It's crazy to think that we've come from that, and that was a thing that would have sent religious soldiers into churches and arrested priests.
Yeah. No, we are very blessed to live in the time we do, because when you study church history, as bad as things are, you can certainly see. So church history is kind of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, you look at it and you go, well, in all history is this way. Oh, shoot, I see the path we're going down. I think I know what's coming next. This isn't good. On the other side of it, though, you go, but we've lived through worse. And I look at the people who got through those harder times. They made it, so and if I don't make it, I'm still going to be faithful. And so there's a bit of I'm both encouraged because I know we can come through the other side, but I'm also discouraged because I can now see clearly that those problems that I think are going to be real, they are going to be real problems. Believe me, they're going to be big.
Right. The temple has to be burned. We have to be kicked out of Jerusalem, or we have to tell people that Jesus is Lord, and we're kicked out by 5 different Caesars and 5 different churches and 5 different time periods, or we're forced to take the gospel to the Native Americans because this famous preacher is now kicked out, but then the proliferation of the gospel occurs because of that. God uses those key moments of low points to accentuate and to expand His kingdom.